Welcome back to PLMA's 2013 Private Label Trade Show. I'm Jody Daly.
And I'm Brian Sharaff.
Well, it has been quite a show. You can see why store brands are upward bound. The excitement on the show floor tells it all. The buyers are here on the prowl for new products. Suppliers have ratcheted up their inventory of innovations. It's been great.
Yeah, and you know, private label is a little different than lots of other trade shows. The buyers and the sellers, in many cases, know each other. They work together throughout the year. They trust each other. Sometimes they don't trust each other, but you know, they have developed relationships based upon the products. And you see it here in the show because lots and lots of meetings where they're exchanging ideas about what they want to do next year, what they're going to be doing with product development. So that's the feeling, a very professional, business-like show.
And it's been exciting in every aspect. I think our show floor explorers, Michael Sansolo and Bob Vosberg, did a terrific job in finding new products.
Don't give them a swell head. I mean, next year they won't be, livable.
Well, I still think you did a great job,
Yeah.
guys. And Kurt, of course, at the Idea Supermarket gave us a chance to see what retailers around the world were up to.
Yeah, and he's promising that when some of these French products come to the United States, he'll be able to pronounce them better. Yeah.
Well, speaking of French and coming to the United States, how's the press been?
Well, the press, of course, has been very attentive to the growth of private label. And one of the thoughts I had was to find out more about the insights of the press as the show develops. Tim Simmons gathered two of the industry's most savvy observers for their insights. And Tim, take it away.
Thanks, Brian. With me today is Carol Angersani, an associate editor of Supermarket News, and Chris Durham, founder of My Private Brand, an online publication. Chris, let's start with you. Your publication covers private label products and packaging and branding. What have you seen that's exciting this year?
Certainly. Probably the most exciting thing I've seen is the spinoff by Target of the Simply Balanced brand. So Simply Balanced had been a part of Archer Farms to date, and they recognized that their customer really needed some better solutions for natural and organic and better for you products. So GMO-free and other things like that. So they spun it off from Archer Farms, created some beautiful packaging that's very easy to shop, and a really, really nice message that speaks directly to their customer about helping her keep her life simply balanced. It's a much higher brand positioning than simply a price point or simply a product attribute.
Carol, what have you seen that's interesting this year?
Well, Tim, one of the trends I've been following is how retailers are putting consumers in the role of brand champions. And one of the ways they're doing this is on Facebook. They're asking consumers to take photos of their brands on the road, on vacation, at picnics, and post those pictures on Facebook. And they're launching contests, and the best photo will win. And it's really a way to increase the brand engagement with consumers.
You see more and more retailers doing this?
Yes, I've seen, it's becoming a trend. We've seen Publix do it, Brookshire. A&P had a video on its website and on Facebook interviewing consumers, getting right from consumers' point of view of what the quality and the value of the brands are.
Now, looking ahead to next year, I don't want to ask you to make a prediction, but come up with a wish list. What do you think, Chris, that you'd like to see happen next year in store brands?
Certainly two things. Number one, we really would like to see them stop copying. Traditionally, it's been about copying national brands. So here's Cheerios, here's our version of Cheerios for 30% less. What we've seen in the last few years is a lot of copying of each other. So if it's successful at one store, they'll go, hey, I need my version of that. What we'd like to see there is really see the retailers develop strategies and brands that are unique to them and differentiate them such that it couldn't be copied by someone else. The second thing is to evolve beyond tiers. So tiers have certainly been a very successful strategy for private label for many years. There's nothing wrong with that. However, it's a labeling strategy. It's not a branding strategy. So really developing positionings that are consumer focused to go against those tiers, to really try to engage the customer in a way that they do want to talk about them on Facebook. Because honestly, if it's just about price, they're probably not going to love you that much.
Carol, what about you? What's on your wish list?
Yeah, and what Chris is saying about price point, another way to get away from just that price point is transparency, and we're going to see more transparency with private label. Fresh Direct is in the middle of a major private label initiative. They're launching a new brand, Just Fresh Direct, and on the product packaging, it tells you where that product is sourced from. The eggs are sourced from Pennsylvania farm. There's granola, handmade upstate New York. So we're going to see more of that.
Carol and Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Tim.
Tim.
Back to you, Brian.
Thanks, Tim.
Now, I understand that you have Edward Salzano back for closing comments about the exhibitors here at the show.
Well, Edward, of course, has years of experience, and we wanted to tap his knowledge. The show may be over, but the difficult part now is making those contacts into something important. So, Edward, where are you? It looks like you're on the show floor. Let me start with a simple question. What should an exhibitor be doing now?
Brian, what the exhibitors should be doing now in this last hour before everything gets broken down is to really sit down with the team and tell everybody, start writing down your thoughts. What happened? Who'd you talk to? What were the discussions that you went over? This is a critical time because if you don't do it now, you're going to forget by the time you go back to the home office.
Edward, what are the follow-up steps that exhibitors need to take when they get back to their office?
Well, when you get back to the office, the most important thing, I think, is to take that information that we talked about before, those things that you wrote down, circulate it now between and among all the members of your team. This way, somebody else on the team could, add something or said, I thought of something else. The other thing that's really important is to take all those business cards that you stuck in your pocket or purse, see if you wrote something on the back, and make sure you put a list together of how you're going to follow up with those retailers. The worst thing that can happen is that there is no follow-up. If a retailer asks you for a sample, make sure it goes out and it goes out quickly. If the retailer asks you to follow up on something and you can't do it immediately, at least send them a correspondence, letting them know that you're working on it, and give them an idea of when they will get that response. It's critical.
For new first-time exhibitors, it could be very interesting to hear what advice do you want to give them?
Brian, the advice that I would give the new exhibitors is that if you were disappointed and you didn't see every buyer you wanted to see at the show, write them, follow up, say, sorry we couldn't catch up at this year's PLMA. I'd like to come in, I'd like to talk to you about some of the things that I wanted to show you at the show, some new things that we had. For the buyers that you did see at the show, it's equally important to follow up. Thank them for stopping. Tell them how important it made you feel that they took time out of their day to spend time at your booth. And make sure you follow up with them. Follow up, follow up, follow up. It's the most important thing, Brian, that they have to do.
Okay, thank you, Edward.
Thank you, Brian.
So what's in store for PLMA now that the show is reaching its conclusion? Well, one item on the agenda is helping retailers and manufacturers to understand the next generation of shoppers who are coming of age, the millennials. Joe Azzanaro, who has shepherded many studies and reports for PLMA, says that this generation may hold the key to store brands' future growth. Welcome, Joe. So glad to have you here.
Thanks, Jody. Glad to be here.
So tell us what we can expect from this new PLMA study on millennials.
We often hear the term next big thing,
Right.
and literally and figuratively, this is the next big thing in terms of the American demographic and also in the consumer block that's coming online. We're talking about 80 million Americans, many of whom are still under the age of 18, so it hasn't fully gotten mature. But by 2017, they will become the biggest selling, the biggest spending consumer block, surpassing the baby boomers. We do know some things about them. Their influences have clearly been, like other generations, they've been influenced by war, they've been influenced by the economy. But one influence that never affected previous generations was technology.
Right.
And that is their number one influence, certainly personal technology. For them, social it disrupts everything. That's the single most important thing in their life, which in effect throws out the old playbook in terms of marketing to these individuals, because they're just not influenced as previous generations were by advertising, by product claims, by branding. They're more likely to be influenced by their peers and what their peers have to say. So our goal in this study is to determine what moves these folks, and more importantly, who do they trust and what do they trust? Because anyone selling products in this country has got to understand the millennials.
So what are some of the key questions that retailers need answered when they're talking about millennials and planning for them?
Well, first we find out what moves them, and then we have to find out how to reach them, and of course that's the payoff. So we'll be analyzing their habits, their attitudes, their preferences when it comes to shopping, when it comes to stores, when it comes to brands, and certainly store brands. And most importantly, how those values that they have, which we know a little bit about from social science, how those values intersect with their shopping experience. We think that's where the interesting material will come out. Anybody, as I said, anybody who's going to be selling products really has to know more about them in the future. So.
It sounds like an incredible study. And what do you think, I mean, your time frame on this, when do you think the report's going to be available?
We will be in the field probably at the end of the year, and we will have a report in the spring of 2014. We'll be probably sending out something like 50 or 60 questions, and it will be all online, which makes a lot of sense since these folks are only available online. They're certainly not going to be answering their phone. So
no, I can guarantee you they're not going to be
right,
answering their phone.
Exactly. So look for it in spring 2014.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jody.
And now we have something very special. We're going to go across the studio to Brian, who has a very interesting guest with him.
Okay, so as I promised, we have some unfinished store brand business. 34 states permit the sale of wine in supermarkets and drug chains. Not surprisingly, retailers in those states have presented consumers with some formidable store brand labels. In fact, we have private label winemakers here as exhibitors at the show. So I thought, what better way to wrap up this year's coverage than with a taste of the bubbly store brand style. And joining us as our guide through the reds and the whites is Daniel Sanders, who's a sommelier at the Hyatt Regency O'Hare. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much
Thanks
for having
for
me,
joining
Brian
us,
and Jody.
Daniel.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get started.
All right, let's-
So what we've got to start is a couple of whites, right?
Sounds good.
What were you going to say about
We have
whites?
our Rubber Mondavi, and then we have our Wellington wines. Now, the key to tasting wines, you want to start with your whites,
Thank you.
and then you want to go to your red wines. So you want to start lighter and then move to the full body. And it's 3 steps here. It's sight, smell, and then the actual taste.
Okay.
Okay. So ladies first.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Are you driving tonight?
I'm going to try to get through the wine
Are you
tasting
flying?
while- and
Are you
speak
flying the plane? Okay.
All right, so we go ahead and we take a look at the wine. Notice the color, and the color will give us whether it's been aged in barrel or in tank.
English. Okay.
So you go ahead and you smell the aroma there.
Mm-hmm.
That will also give us whether it's been aged in barrel or in the tank, stainless steel tank as well. So this one, you can obviously smell the oak. So
Okay.
that means it was,
This is the Mondavi.
this is the Mondavi,
Davi.
yes.
Chardonnay. Chardonnay.
Chardonnay,
Okay.
sure. Let's go ahead and take
Ready?
a sip.
Okay.
Very nice.
That's really very good.
No, too
That was
early for
good.
that. we have a lot more wine to do.
Yeah, right?
Okay, now.
Okay.
Now remember, they're both the same color, so it can easily get confused. here.
Exactly.
Okay, so
yeah.
I'm going to keep the.
That one was really good.
So this is a national brand. Mondavi is a national brand. Okay, and
Yes.
this is a private label.
This is private label. It's offered by Robinson and Sinclair.
Robinson.
Okay, from South Africa.
South Africa.
And
Oh,
it's
okay.
sold with various retailer brands in the world and Europe and all. And so we put this one here.
So this one is
Very
a
nice,
definitely
too.
different aroma from the first one, as you can tell.
Yeah, it's. I don't smell as much oak.
No, it's not much smoke. This is going to be stainless steel, which is very usual in South Africa to
Yeah.
do that.
That's really nice too. They're both Chardonnays, but they both taste very different.
Exactly. And that has a lot to do from where it's from and how it's aged.
This one's a little sweeter. Am I tasting a little sweeter?
And a
It
little
is.
lighter.
A little lighter?
Yeah.
Yes, it is definitely, it's a lot of fruit. It's a lot of fruit forward. You get a lot of the apple and pear.
Okay. So as a store brand wine, you find this acceptable and good?
This is very good, especially
Okay.
with a light meal.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
Now let's put these over and we'll move those glasses over
Okay.
here
All right.
and we'll go to some reds. And our 2 reds, okay, our 2 reds, one is a Kendall Jackson.
Okay, so that would be the national brand.
Yep, it's Cabernet Sauvignon. And this is from France, Tirani, and they also are sold throughout Europe as the store brand. So we'll give you the Kendall Jackson first. I know I'm supposed to put my arm behind my back, right?
You are.
And aren't you supposed to have a towel over the front?
Well, sometimes I take just a whole bathrobe. I sometimes I use a bathrobe.
Now, Judy and Brian, what we use to actually taste the wine is not our taste bud, it's actually our retronasal passage, which is located behind our nose. So if you ever had like a test, you want to do a test, you can hold your nose, you can chew Starburst, and you'll just feel the texture of sugar. And when you open your nose, you can actually get the flavors and aromas.
Okay, so are we swirling this?
So you can go ahead and aerate it. Red wines you definitely have to open it up sometimes, depending on where they're from.
And the trick is to swirl without spilling.
Yes.
Swirl without spilling. Try this one. That's just as good as the first glass.
There's a lot of pepper in
It's
there.
a lot of pepper, exactly. You get a
I
lot
didn't
of
put it in. I didn't put in any of that pepper.
You get a lot of black fruits. There's plum, black
Some
cherry.
earth in there. Now this is an American wine, right?
Yes. So I'm glad you brought that up. The difference between a New World wine is what we would call South Africa, New Zealand, America, and Old World wines are more earth forward. So they'll have the dust, the cigar. Sounds good, right?
That's like a Bordeaux or
Yes.
the old French. That's why the French wines are kind of bigger with
Bigger,
peats.
bold,
Yeah.
heavy.
Okay, so this in fact is a Cabernet from France.
Francais.
Just what we were talking about.
Exactly. So we will definitely see the difference here. The one from America, California, I believe, will be a little more fruit forward than this one.
Okay. Okay, softer.
That one is very soft on the palate.
Is it young? Is that
It's
what it is?
full body, and it is very young. It's
Yeah.
only a year young.
Yeah, yeah.
Now I know you said that French wines are normally more earthy, but I'm getting a lot of cherry.
I
and
am.
I'm getting a light kind of almost I don't know. It's just a very refreshing wine.
And this is one of the rare cases where actually the old world is trying to imitate the new world because if you don't know, we actually surpassed France in being the #1 country,
There you go.
right? And #1 country in consuming wine.
Consuming wines.
Yes,
We drink a lot.
consuming wine.
Okay.
So I
Okay,
don't know.
that's a double bump.
I don't know
then.
what's. I don't know if they're
But again, I
drugs or
mean,
what, but
important to note, this is a private label.
This is
private label.
great.
It's really good.
And
It's
so
really
again, the store brands in the wine side
I mean,
are
seriously, I would
very
serve this.
competitive.
I would definitely
Yeah.
serve this.
Okay, now, a lot of store brands go down the mainstream of wine, Chardonnays, Cabernets. So we got two from exhibitors who are involved in some unusual things. By the way, the Cabernet is from the exhibitor Vino Vallée. They are in booth 1808. The Chardonnay was from Robinson and Sinclair.
Robinson.
Okay, from South Africa. Now we go to this next batch. So we get
Now
some more
the
glasses.
reason you got these was because they were a little bit different.
Yeah. I thought it would be interesting to see what we have. This is a Pinotage from South Africa.
Now, what is a Pinotage as opposed to like a Cabernet Sauvignon or a Pinot Noir?
So Pinotage is actually a crossbreed between two grapes, Pinot Noir and Cinsault. Cinsault is actually a grape indigenous to southern France.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's two grapes together, which you find very common in there.
Okay,
I'm actually gonna get some water there.
oh, here.
Cleanse
If
my
you want to
palate. Thank you
cleanse
very
your
much.
palate,
Oh, hell no. I ruined a good
cleanse your
step.
palate. Okay, so Pinotage, glasses up, skull, whatever you
Oh.
want.
Glasses up.
There's a lot going on in that glass.
Yes.
It's
Yeah, it's got a lot of flavor.
a lot of flavor. And
A lot
it's
of flavor.
A little bit tart. And at
It's-
the same time, it has some body underneath, and it hits you on all parts of your tongue.
It does, and then if you get the roof of your mouth is very dry, it's from the tannins and
Now I'm
the
going to have
grapes.
some of that water.
This is very earthy. A lot of pepper. You
Yep.
get some dust, cigar in there.
Okay, so the other one, which we're going to wrap up with, is from Del Rio. It's a Muscat, and a little bit on the sweet side, as Muscats may be.
Yeah, Muscat is actually arguably the oldest cultivated grape. And if you ever heard of Moscato, there's actually a variety of Muscat in Italy, and it has a little
Yeah,
bubbly on there.
Very refreshing. I can see this in the summertime.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Nice and cold with a light lunch or something.
Yeah.
It's not quite a dessert wine, but don't they make dessert wines out of this grape?
Yes.
Yes, they do. Make Muscadel,
Muscadel.
which is a dessert wine used with Muscat.
Good.
Very nice.
Okay, so the wines we have, we see very, very competitive store brand wines.
I'll say.
Right? I mean, I plan to drink up everything after you guys close down the cameras.
Not a problem.
The companies we've been talking to, Del Rio Vineyards, which is in booth 2512, Vino Vallée from France in booth 1808. You notice how I said France?
France.
Because otherwise I would say France.
You're really getting
Right.
into it that way.
And then also Robinson and Sinclair, and they're in booth 1852. So this is a wonderful assortment of store brand red wines, competitive with the best of the national brands. And thank you so much for
You're very
explaining.
I know, it was lovely.
Thank you
Thanks
for
a lot.
having me.
Really appreciate it. Well, I know it's a little bit early for Old Lang Syne, but on behalf of Brian and myself, and also Daniel and the entire PLMA team, I hope you have enjoyed this year's coverage of the show, and we will see you soon. This is lovely. Cheers. Come on in, guys. Come on, there's
Come on in, guys. Have some wine.
There's wine for everybody.
Salud, salud.
This is
Unfortunately, you have to bring your own glass. You don't mind if you share a glass, do you?